Hey guys, Matty Miller with Pursuit Real Estate here in my native habitat of my home office. Talking today about the new updates on the landlord-tenant law, which would be Statute 83 here in the state of Florida. Just a couple quick updates we want to cover, and we'll get right into it. All right, so a couple things on updates on the Landlord-Tenant Act, obviously. They've made two changes that are pretty significant, not necessarily something that's going to be a huge deal for most landlords. However, we want to cover those changes so you're aware. If you have properties with me or with somebody else, just make sure you're aware, make sure your property manager knows the changes. So two main changes. Number one, and we'll first talk about the easy one first. So the month-to-month agreement. So if you have a tenant who is on a month-to-month agreement, in other words, they've probably were in a lease and we went month-to-month or agreed to go month-to-month, which most leases in the state of Florida will automatically roll to a month-to-month agreement. The old law was that basically at any point in time, you could let that person know that within 15 days or no later than 15 days, you could basically give them 15 days to get out of the home in a current month-to-month agreement, which is a very short window to tell somebody that they need to find a home with basically in 2 weeks. So I actually really do agree with this law, in hindsight of dealing with people. So essentially now, even if you're on a month-to-month agreement with a tenant, you now have to give 30 days notice prior to terminating their month-to-month agreement. So you have to give them a full month to be able to find a new home, which I think is very fair. I always felt like with most of my owners, I would tell them, listen, try to give 30 days if you can. I know it's tough. It is an advantage for the landlord, but I think in all fairness to people, this is probably a good change for the long run. So that is one. So month-to-month tenant, you now have to give a 30-day notice, no later than 30 days to end that current agreement. So we can talk about that later. If you have any questions, let me know on that. The second change is in regards to someone who is actually on a full lease. So if they're on a full lease and their lease is coming to an end, you used to only have to give basically 30 days. So of a non-renewal, if you were not going to renew them, you had to let them know no later than 30 days. And there was also kind of a provision in there as far as tenants. Some leases would have them built in that the tenant would have to give them a 60-day notice, which not necessarily is, it's still legal, but basically what they're trying to do is make it so it's fair for both sides. So essentially what you have to do now, the time period in the case of the tenant renewing the lease, they don't have to give you notice unless it's inside of 60 days. So essentially what it's boiling down to is they don't have to give you anything outside of 60 days. They can't require 90 days of notice to the landlord. The landlord now has to give cannot be less than 30 days, cannot be less than 30 days and cannot be more than 60. So essentially what that's saying is both parties at the 45-day mark need to let somebody know who's not renewing and who is renewing. So that's a very simple way to look at it. So we will now have to start doing 45-day notices when you get to a month and a half out, whether the landlord's not going to renew that or whether the tenant's not going to renew. So that will be a change throughout the state of Florida that has already taken effect. So essentially, I think moral of the story is you're just trying to allow people to find places to go if they need to leave. And I think it's very fair on both sides. I try to lean on the side of giving people more time, as long as they're being fair with us, paying their rent on time, doing what they should be doing. So a couple little small changes, nothing major. If you guys have any questions about it, please let me know. Matty Miller with Pursuit Real Estate. Thanks and have a great weekend.